Today we're going to be talking about the sides in right triangles and identifying them in relation to a given angle. So we're going to have three names for a side. We're going to have the hypotenuse, which we have already talked about several times. And remember, the hypotenuse is the side that is always across from the right angle, no matter what. So whenever we're labeling these sides, the first thing I like to do is label the hypotenuse because that will be the same no matter what. It's whatever side is across from my box. So if here's my box, my right angle, C is the hypotenuse. Now the opposite side is the side that is not touching the angle we're talking about. So if I'm talking about this angle right here, and what this is the Greek letter theta, which is just a symbol for an angle measure. So if I'm talking about this angle right here, theta, then the side that is opposite is A, because it doesn't touch that side. So when I do these, I like to say, all right, opposite, and we did the hypotenuse, hype. And then the last side we're going to be talking about is called the adjacent side. Now the adjacent side is the side connecting the angle we're talking about and the right angle. So again, if I'm talking about this angle up here, theta, then the adjacent side is this one, and we can abbreviate that ADJ. Now, adjacent is a side that some people will struggle with, so I always do the hypotenuse first because that's easy. It doesn't touch the right angle. Then I do the opposite side because it doesn't touch the angle we're talking about. So that means the remaining one has to be the adjacent. Something important to notice and point out is that the opposite and adjacent side, they change depending on what angle we're talking about. Because what if I talk about this angle right here? Well, this angle right here, now this side, A, is no longer the opposite. Side B is the opposite because that does not touch angle X. But the hypotenuse will always stay the same. So like we're saying, the sides, the opposite and adjacent side are dependent on the angle you are talking about. All right, so on these problems here, there is a misprint that I forgot to change before sending these to the printer. So this is also going to appear on your homework. The last one where it says ratio of the opposite over adjacent, what this needs to say is the adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, so please change all of these to adjacent over hypotenuse. That is going to be true on the homework as well. So now let's label this. If we're talking about angle A is right here. This is our right angle, which makes side C the hypotenuse. And side A would be the opposite side since it doesn't touch the angle we're talking about. We're talking about this angle right here. So side A is the opposite, which should make side B the adjacent. So now let's go and label things. The opposite side is A. The adjacent side is B. And the hypotenuse is C. Now the ratio, remember ratios are just fractions. So the opposite over the adjacent, that's going to be A over B. Okay, I'm getting these from right up here. The ratio of the opposite over the hypotenuse. The opposite is A over the hypotenuse, which is C. And the ratio of the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So the adjacent is B over the hypotenuse, C. So now we're going to do the same thing, but instead of angle A, we're going to be referring to angle B. Now, because this is a right triangle, the hypotenuse is still going to be the same. But if this is the angle we're talking about, Now, side B over here is the opposite side. And side A right here is the adjacent, because remember, the opposite side does not touch the angle we're talking about. So the opposite side is now B. The adjacent side is A. The hypotenuse is still C. So look what happened here. These two are the same. Like they switched. We could think about it as it crossed. The adjacent side for one angle is the opposite side for the other one. Now the ratio, the opposite over the adjacent. The opposite over adjacent is going to be B. Let me use the same colors. B over A. The opposite over the hypotenuse, okay, the opposite is now B over the hypotenuse, which is C. And the ratio of the adjacent over hypotenuse, so adjacent is A over the hypotenuse, which is C. And you can see with the ratios as well, these two match and these two match. So it does depend on what side we are talking about when we label things. So I can understand that with letters, it may not be as easy to see, but all we're doing is just labeling sides and creating ratios. We're not solving for anything. We're not combining like terms. This is all we're doing. So now on the next page, what we're going to be doing is using actual values. Remember, this last one is going to be changed to adjacent over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse. So again, on your homework, same thing. I need you to change this to adjacent over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, so referring to angle A, here's angle A. The hypotenuse, here's our box, so here's hypotenuse. If here's angle A, that means this is the opposite side, because this side that's 24 does not touch angle A, and that makes the 7 here the adjacent. So the opposite side is 24, the adjacent side is 7, and the hypotenuse is 25. So my ratio, opposite over adjacent. Opposite is 24 over adjacent, which is 7. Ratio of opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite, again, is 24 over the hypotenuse, which is 25. And then adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 7 over hypotenuse, which is 25. So again, we're not doing any simplifying. Just leave it alone. Leave it like this. Now let's look at referring to angle B. Well, angle B is right here. Our hypotenuse doesn't change. But now 7 is the opposite side because it doesn't touch the angle B right here. And the adjacent side is 24 because it's the only one left. All right, so now let's fill this out. The opposite side is now 7. The adjacent side is 24. The hypotenuse is 25. The ratio opposite over adjacent is going to be 7 over 24. Ratio of opposite over hypotenuse is going to be 7 over 25. The ratio of adjacent over hypotenuse will be 24 over 25. So you can see that if you do this for one of the angles, you could just use the pattern to find all the information for the other angle. But if not, you can just rewrite it, or sorry, erase and redo this and figure out where things go. Right, now this one, angle A, so here's A. Here is my right angle, so this side that's 10 is the hypotenuse. 8, this side does not touch angle A, so it's the opposite, which leaves 6 as the adjacent. Okay, so let's fill this out. The opposite side is 8, the adjacent side is 6, the hypotenuse 10. Ratio of opposite over adjacent, opposite is 8, over the adjacent is 6. The ratio of the opposite over hypotenuse, opposite again is 8, over the hypotenuse is 10. And then lastly, the ratio of the adjacent over the hypotenuse, adjacent is 6, and the hypotenuse is 10. Now let's erase this. I'm not going to erase the hypotenuse this time because we know that's going to be the same. But now with angle B. Angle B now, the opposite side is 6 because this side doesn't touch angle B. And that makes this side 8 the adjacent. So opposite is now 6, the adjacent is 8, hypotenuse is 10. Ratio of opposite over adjacent, opposite again is 6, over the adjacent, which is 8. Ratio of opposite over the hypotenuse, opposite is 6, hypotenuse is 10. And then finally the ratio of the adjacent, which is 8, over the hypotenuse, which is 10. Okay. So this is going to be very useful later on. Then, and also it's going to be super critical. That's why we're doing so much practice of labeling the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse, and being able to write these ratios. You have to be able to do this. On the next page, after we fix the mistake I made, the misprint, I'm going to have you guys pause the video and try this. So adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and try these problems here. And then once you're done, unpause it and check your answers with mine. All right, so here's my answer for the first problem. You can check those real quick if need be. Pause it to check yours. And then down here, again, pause it to check your work here. So that is it for this lesson. Make sure you really are able to identify the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. You will struggle mightily if you are unable to do this. So thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe.